Great. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Rise in Conversation series. I'm Nick Kemp, and I'm your host today. For those that don't know, Rise is an advocacy group. It helps promote diverse workforce and equalises the gender balance in the broadcast and media industry. We're currently running mentoring schemes for women wishing to grow their career, break the glass ceiling, or just move into the industry. Particularly in non-craft roles, for example, for engineering, in technical roles, sales, marketing, product and manufacturing. Currently, we've got schemes running in UK, in Asia, and now for the first time this year in North America as well. We also have Rise Up, which is an educational arm, which aims to nurture young talent and get interest in engineering and technical roles in the broadcast tech industry, and by running workshops in primary and secondary schools. And we also have a mentoring scheme for college students. So we're busy. We've got lots more happening this year. So please do sign up on our website if you haven't already, and stay in touch with us. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Paola Hobson. She's Managing Director of InSync, which is a UK company that designs, develops and manufactures specialised products for the international broadcasting industry. She's also Deputy Editor and Technical Reviewer of the IET, which is the Image Processing Journal. She's won a Queen's Award for Enterprise in 2020, and she's a Rise Mentor. I'm really excited to be talking to Paola today. She really is someone who's crafted her talents in the engineering and in the business world. And she's a fantastic role model to the industry. So welcome, Paola.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. And how are you today?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. But after your introduction, I'm feeling a little bit sort of modest, you know. It's not quite as grand as it sounds.
Oh well, I think you've done some amazing achievements, absolutely. So actually, what would be amazing, actually, I'm not sure if I describe your role at InSync and describing InSync. It would be lovely to hear from you what you do at InSync and what InSync does, and sort of what a typical day would look like.
Yeah, so I'm the Managing Director of InSync Technology. We are a small UK-based company which designs, develops and manufactures products for the broadcast industry. We make hardware and software products to help customers generate value from international distribution of their content. And specifically, we're specialists in standards conversion. So that's format and frame rate conversion of video. So my role as the MD is to lead the company strategy for InSync Technology. So really trying to think about what products we need to offer short term, medium term, long term, and therefore what engineering projects do we need to put in place to deliver on the customer needs, and how can we anticipate future market opportunities. I also on a day-to-day basis coordinate the company, so kind of joining up the different functions: sales, marketing, engineering and operations. An MD is more like glue in a company, but you're also oil. So you're sort of smoothing out problems and taking obstacles out of the way, and then trying to help everybody realize their own personal potential. So that's kind of the inward looking face of the MD role. Outwardly, you're the public face of the company. So the person you see on the marketing messages, that's the MD. The person who represents the company position relating to technology, ethics, environment, whatever we want to talk about, that's the MD. So on a day-to-day basis, you will have customer contact, sales activity, marketing activity, and internal sort of organizational activities.
Wow. So yeah, that's a lot, and you've also got your expertise as well that you, I'm sure, throw into the company on a day-to-day basis as well. So yeah, as we're talking about InSync, InSync is a really interesting company. It's an employee-owned company, And when did this happen? And please, could you tell us a little bit more about what this means?
Yeah, so InSync Technology was founded in 2003, and we've been employee owned since 2013. Now, our model of employee ownership is what they tend to call a hybrid model. So we have an employee benefit trust, but we also have individual share ownership via a share incentive plan. Now, what that means in practice is the majority of the company shares are held for staff by the employee benefit trust. So the trust has got 70% of the shares, and that ensures that the company acts in the interest of its staff at all time. Now, day-to-day management is delegated to the board of directors, and I chair the board of directors. But important company strategic decisions are always referred to the staff. And we have an employee director on our board, and we invite staff to ask the board questions on a regular basis, and we involve staff in all big decisions, and we keep staff up to date with all the big pieces of information like financial data and where we are on negotiations with customers and things. People really have to join in the company. And then we also have a share incentive plan. So that means that all staff equally can purchase company shares. We have an accumulation plan. Over the period of the year, you save up some money. At the end of the year, you can then buy a few company shares. And then if we do have a profit, we have a profit share, which is shared equitably amongst the staff. It's a very different model to other companies where you might have one or two directors. The directors pay themselves lovely dividends. The directors pay themselves lovely bonuses. We don't have that. Everybody is treated equally. That's the whole point of an employee-owned company. All schemes have got to be equitable. So any benefit has to benefit all staff, and all staff have to get involved in the company decisions, and all staff have to contribute towards getting the profit. But then all staff get their share of the rewards.
Gosh, that's incredible. It's absolutely fascinating, and this must have a huge impact on how people turn up to work and show up to work and enjoy their job and literally investing in their work. Have you seen a difference in that?
Yes. So I think the company was always very open, very equitable, very collaborative anyway. It just means that, I hope anyway, and staff really feel like owners, and they do something because they say it's my company. Yeah. And somebody takes an action, you say, thank you for doing that, and they say, that's okay, it's my company, I want to do that, I want my company to succeed. I like people feeling that it's their company, and what they do makes a difference. It is very different to a lot of organizations.
And are there, I'm interested, are there many, is it quite unique to have a company set up like this, or is it something that's...
It's interesting, actually. There are in Britain quite a lot of employee-owned companies now, and the biggest one that everybody talks about is John Lewis Partnership. So partnership is one model of employee ownership, which is quite common. You get a lot of architects, lawyers, accountants, and so on run as partnerships. Which is brilliant. But there are quite a few small companies like ours that have either a trust or individual share ownership, or a hybrid model like ours. Lots of small companies around Britain. It suits a lot of small manufacturing companies like ours, because there's always people involved, people wanting to take the company forward. There's always lots of ideas being generated. It's a very successful model.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's really interesting. So Paola, it'd be lovely to hear about your journey and how you started off in engineering, and how you got to where you are at InSync.
Yeah, well, I was always good at maths and science at school. So it was kind of a bit obvious when it came to choosing a degree. Electronic engineering was pretty obvious. It's problem solving, it's practical work. And what I really like is being able to make things happen. So when you can, join things up and watch, the impact of something, that's great. So yeah, that was an obvious choice. And then when I was a student, I managed to get a couple of placements in industry, one of which was with the BBC in the audio test room at the World Service in central London. So there I was in an environment where you could spend your day designing stuff, building stuff, testing it, taking it in, trying it out, and get paid for it. It's like, wow, okay. So, well, if that's what a career in engineering is like, I think I'd like to do that. I did a PhD and I did really enjoy that. And you kind of can go into depths on something. But what I realized was I actually quite like the practical problem solving. So industrial research and development is more, kind of was more my thing. And I was very fortunate that when I finished my PhD, I managed to get a senior engineer job at the Independent Broadcasting Authority. And I haven't looked back since. It was just like, you get paid for doing stuff you like. That's a very unusual thing in the world of work. And so I've stuck with it.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. I love that. That you landed this job, that you can believe you can believe your luck.
Yeah.
That it was. Yeah, that's fantastic. So how did you end up so after you did that? What other companies did you work for?
Yeah, so I was in the broadcast industry for a bit. Obviously, the Independent Broadcasting Authority was dissolved in 1990, and various things happened. But I moved on to Thomson, at the time better known as being camera manufacturers, but I mean there was other stuff we did as well, and worked for them for a little while. Stayed in the broadcast industry for a while, but then I had 13 years in the mobile industry. So I worked at Motorola on, first of all, mobile radio applications and then mobile phone applications, which again was great because here's an opportunity to work in a really advanced environment, work with very, very clever people, and work on projects that were quite groundbreaking. So, again, you couldn't believe my luck and how fantastic that was. But unfortunately, various things happened to Motorola and they closed the European labs. Came back into the broadcast industry with Snell and Wilcox, and then moved to InSync after that. So I've just been very, very fortunate that stuff has come up at moments that I've been ready to move.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's great. And Snell and Wilcox is they do very similar frame rate conversions and motion compensation as well. Would you be able to talk in layman's terms what motion compensation and frame rate conversion is, for those that don't understand that?
Yeah, so the video that we watch on a mobile device or a PC screen or your home TV actually is a series of still images. Most people know that. They're presented at a high enough frame rate so that they look like they're moving. So in Europe, our TV sets refresh at 50 frames a second. In the US, it's 59.94 frames per second. So if you're a soccer fan in the US and you want to watch football from Europe, the content, if it comes in at 50 frames per second, cannot be displayed on your telly. So you need something to convert it to 59 so it displays correctly on your 59 hertz TV. Now, if you think about it, if you go 50 to 59.94, oh, well, I just need to chuck in a few extra frames now and again. That'll increase the frame rate and everything's fine. But of course, the problem with that is you'll get very uneven motion. And if you are a football fan, that will drive you mad. So what InSync do is make new frame rates. So we consider effectively that 59.94 hertz stream to be something completely new. And we look at the content in the original 50 hertz stream and we work out where every object needs to be at each new time interval in the 59 hertz stream. So effectively, that is what motion compensation is. It says, I know where an object is at this time. I need to work out where that object needs to be in a different time. And I then have to project that motion and I project that object. So maybe if we're talking about football, think about a ball. Mm-hmm. So in a 50 hertz stream, we know where that ball is every 20 milliseconds. So to make a 5994 hertz stream, we need to calculate where that ball is every 16.67 milliseconds. We know what a ball looks like. We've got the original content. So we've got to make new frames, putting the ball in the correct place at those intervals.
And you know where it starts and you know where it's going. So it's the in-between bits.
It is, but that's interesting. That's very interesting because, of course, that assumes that motion is regular.
Yes.
And everything's nice and easy. So in fact, just going back to football, you're watching a long kick. Yeah, rugby would be another one. You're watching a long kick, and at the beginning, the ball does go up in a nice linear trajectory. You know, that's all very easy. And you probably can predict that one. But what do you do? Let's say it's rugby. The ball spins. And sometimes the ball comes towards the camera, so it's getting bigger. Or sometimes it's moving away, so it's getting smaller. Motion isn't nice and regular. If it was, it'd be easy to do all of this stuff. It's because motion is very irregular, and because there's always lots of things moving at different times. So even when the ball's moving, the players are moving, their arms are moving one way, people are crossing each other. You know, it is pretty complex. So not many people can do what InSync does.
Yeah, that's amazing. So my next question really is about the technological changes that have happened over the years. I mean, obviously, you know, there's lots of different frame rates coming out. There's you've now got working with 4K, HDR, many different variables, and people watching things on different consumer devices. So how does this affect you, and what are the biggest recent changes that you've seen, and how have you resolved those?
Yeah, it is interesting that in broadcast things change all the time. There's always something new because the content owners or the broadcasters want to find new customers, big competition. So for example, at the moment, we're seeing a lot of streaming services, and there's a big fight for customers, and you know, there's concern about churn rates. So there's kind of more services, less dollars per being spent per user. And so people are always looking for new things. So for example, trying new formats like 4K or 8K, trying new ways of presenting the information, for example, using high dynamic range. Some people are experimenting as well with higher frame rates, especially for sports content. So there's lots of different things going on. There's always lots of things going on. And that suits us very well because we are people who can transform content from one format and frame rate to another format and frame rate. Yeah. So we love changes like that. So every new format. So for example, 8K, there's not a great deal of 8K content around at the moment, but if you need an 8K frame synchronizer, well, you can come to us. If you need a 8K color corrector, you can come to us. So we're building stuff which is just on the very edge of where the market is going. What is interesting though is what sort of we thought was changing but isn't quite, which is that you hear an awful lot about customers wanting to move to software workflows, and they want OPEX models rather than CAPEX models and things like that. And we're finding when you actually start pushing a customer and saying, okay, well, here's the software product, here's the price, why don't we go for it? And they start sort of saying, well, I've actually got this old hardware. Well, I know how much I spend on hardware. I know how long it takes me to recover costs, amortize the cost of an asset over its lifetime. And my engineers know how to set these things up and use them. It's, my workflow is all, geared around that. So what we're finding is, despite the fact that, we've got software products, people can have them in pay-per use. They're very flexible, they're very portable. For some customers, they just have too many uncertainties, and the customer just kind of goes back to the comfortable, well, I could get one more year out of this hardware asset. I think I'll just stick with
sweating their assets out. Yeah, I agree with you. I see that again and again, actually. I think even though the world is changing to a software model, and and a cloud-based model, which was actually something else I was going to ask you.
Mm.
But there's still, you know, there's still for a lot of companies, particularly when you're investing in some really solid hardware. You know, they still want to know that it does the job. That it is, and they can fix it as well as sweating the asset out, isn't it? So making the most of it financially as well. So in terms of the cloud-based models that are coming out, how is InSync working with that? Are you moving your hardware to the cloud?
Yeah, so we were traditionally hardware focused, you know, if you look at our history, but we've been working on software versions of our converters for many years now.
Mm-hmm.
We've got quite a big range of software motion compensated standards converters, and they're deployable in the cloud or on premise or in a hybrid environment. So, for example, InSync has a motion compensated software converter we call Frameformer. Many customers are already using it for file-based conversion, both on-premise and pay-per-use in the cloud. We have a partnership with a company called Highscale, and they have a product called Flix, which is actually extendable. So you can have on-premise and then offload into the cloud if you have peak demand. So it's an incredibly flexible way of doing your conversions. But you'll also find Frameformer in AWS Media Convert or Dalit Amberfin, and you can pay, use it in the cloud on a pay per minute basis. We're also soon going to be deploying or announcing special new deployments of Frameformer Live. So that's InSync's software motion compensated real-time standards converter, created with our partner Highscale into a live real-time converter for live stream conversion. And that software is entirely CPU based, so it can be deployed anywhere. But obviously that works ideally for people who want it to use it in the cloud.
Fantastic. That's great. That's really exciting. And I'm sure that's going to take off that side of things as well. So in your journey, what are the biggest technological changes that you've seen? Not so much recently, but have there been any sort of standout points where may have, you know, caught you and just like, oh my gosh, this is a really big change, and has challenged you particularly, or that's something that's particularly excited you?
I think if I were to think about many years ago, I think the thing that none of us expected in the mobile industry was Apple and what happened there with the smartphone. Or at the time, I think many of us were in a very much an incremental development mode, and things like moving over to color screens, that was kind of a bit of a novelty for some phone manufacturers. And then but this concept of touch screen, and it's the skepticism and the thoughts at the time, and Apple even as a company to make phones, I think none of us expected that, and that was a massive disruption. And of course, yes, a lot of the phone companies have caught up, but in the meantime, there have been a lot of new competitors, and the landscape of the mobile phone industry is incredibly different to where it was just 15 years ago. And that's one where I've seen amazing rapid change. It didn't affect me personally because we were working on slightly different things at the time in the group I was in. But, as a company, Motorola obviously noticed the difference. And I think ultimately Nokia were affected as well. So, yeah, that's probably the biggest one I can think of.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. It's, and it's amazing now, isn't it, how that's affected all of our lives. Every single one of our lives, and our children's lives as well, to the point where it's great, it's really useful, but it's just changed the culture, hasn't it? Yeah, particularly work culture, working constantly, mobile phone, trying to get our kids off a mobile phone. Yeah, that's really interesting. So how do you keep up with changes? And how do you stay in touch with your professional community at large?
Yeah, so I suppose I've been very much for many years, doesn't matter really what industry, but kind of on video and image processing. So I've kept in touch with the IET and, done various activities with, well, we were the professional network on visual information engineering previously. So I've done, various activities with the IET over many years. Now I'm the deputy editor of the Journal for Image Processing Research. So what happens with that is when papers come in, I have a look to see if they're in scope of the journal, and then I find an associate editor who's got the right knowledge to then look after that paper. They farm it out to the reviewers, make the recommendations and so on. And the joy of that means I get to see every paper that comes into the journal. So I obviously I don't have time to read them all properly, but I do get to see what topics are generating the most research, what areas are most active in the research community, and where thoughts are going, because you find stuff in research papers that you're going to see in products in 2 or 3 years. So you're kind of getting an early glimpse at some things which are going to come. I also do still act as associate editor on the journal, and I also still review papers myself. So I do get a chance to read some of the papers in a lot of detail. And that's where I kind of find, what the big things are that's going on. And actually, it is a very exciting thing to do. We get papers from all around the world. And here is where equal opportunities are in practice, because papers are judged on their technical merit. Reviewers look at the paper. They're in general unaware of the gender of the authors. So here it is. Women can submit technical papers here, and there is no risk, or in my mind, I think no risk of any unfavorable treatment because of gender. The papers are judged on their technical merit. It's great.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really interesting. So we need to get more people submitting papers, actually.
Yeah.
And they get published, and then I guess, yeah, that it becomes a topic of conversation, and things get made as well. So what's interested about your journey, and as a woman engineer, and growing up as an engineer in the industry, what challenges and also what successes have you had being a woman?
Yeah, I suppose if I get on my little soapbox and start droning on my stories of sexist behaviour, I think we'd be here all year. I think, like many women, I have got very irritated for being passed over in the interesting assignments, promotions and things like that, where it's very obvious a less qualified, less experienced, less knowledgeable man has been given preference. And I've also come across quite ghastly sexual discrimination and sexual harassment. It's crazy to think in this modern time that these sorts of things happen.
Yeah.
But I think everybody's heard those. They're a bit dull. So let's move on to the good bits. There are some advantages being a woman in engineering. And one of them is that you stand out. People are more likely to remember you. It was a woman. Who was she? Oh, yeah, that's right. So if you need to follow up with someone and you ring them and they hear a female voice and it kind of rings that bell, oh, yeah, I remember her. So if it's a customer, then they're more likely to remember your product. So she was the woman that told me about this. Oh, yes, I remember that. Oh, I'll give her a ring. So it does have that advantage. Another advantage is when you're at a conference or an event and you're speaking, you're the only female speaker in the lineup. So everybody's, kind of nodding. And suddenly there's a change of voice, there's a change of tone. It's somebody different. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, it's a woman. Oh, that's fine. What's she saying? Oh, I don't know. Oh, that's very. And then afterwards at tea break, they'll come up to you and they'll chat because you were the one that they half listen to, and then
They
they
woke
realize,
up to.
yeah. And then they think, oh, I think I'll have a chat. So I think that's, that those are advantages. And I think, if I'm going to be a bit boastful here, for my employers throughout my career, they've got a good advantage, because a woman in engineering still, I think, has to work harder to get there than the men. So you have to be better. If you're in that job, you have to be better, and you have to keep being better, because you have to keep proving yourself. And that's to the benefit of the employer.
That's not a bad thing, is it? Really, it's a good, you might be working harder, but ultimately you become a better person, a better engineer. So yeah, absolutely, I can see that. That's great. And you're a mother as well, so you you went through college, and do you go through college with a child, or was it just going the early stages of your career?
Yeah, so my son was born when I was already senior engineer, and or even a principal engineer, I can't remember. So my son was born when I was already fairly established in my career, but I could not believe the attitude of my peers and my management when I came back to work. It's like the expectation that you don't come back to work after you've had children. That was sort of quite a shock to me. And we thought you weren't coming back. Oh, my sister, after she had her child, she realized the most important thing was to stay at home and look after the children. It's like, oh heavens, you mean I'm not looking after him? He went to nursery. He's very good, my lad. And, it was quite tiring trying to look after a child and work full time, but he was very tolerant, and he eventually looked after me. Now I think it should be a bit easier, I think, because especially in the UK, the law gives parental responsibility as a shared thing. So you are supposed to now allow both father and mother to have time off for childcare, for adoptions as well, things like that. So I think the law has taken a step forward, and I think people are starting to understand that it's good if father and mother share childcare. Yeah. So I think attitudes are changing. I think it's very good. I think we've still got a way to go. But I also think we need to think about other responsibilities. At InSync, we certainly do. We have an equal opportunities policy, and we take into account all types of caring responsibilities, because care for elderly relatives does often fall on women. And again, we have to take into account everybody's circumstances and everybody's caring responsibilities. I think it is changing, and I'm hoping that employers in general have the same attitude. We certainly do at InSync.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think it is changing. But I agree with you that there's still a long way to go. I don't think it's changed fast enough. Some companies are fantastic and like InSync and 100% support. But I do think that there are a lot of companies and attitudes out there that are still quite way behind, and it becomes difficult. And then the caring responsibility for elders as well. That's it's going to happen more and more, isn't it? It's a big problem. So, but I think in terms of being a mother, working mother, the statistics are there to show that being a working mother can give really good role model to your kids as well. I think however hard it is, I think I always hang on to that. It's fine, I'm a good role model, it's okay. Yeah, that's great, and it's great that InSync are really understanding and sort of pushing the boundaries there, particularly with elderly care as well. What about having women on the board? I'm assuming that InSync you have quite a few women on your board?
We have, yeah, we have two women on the board, and we would have more. It's just that candidates haven't necessarily come forward. But I think if you read up a lot of academic studies, I think that what they've proven is that diversity is what you need on a board. So diversity leads to better decision making, so you get better financial results, and the company will run better. But that's all types of diversity. That's gender, race, culture, disability, age, and so on. Diverse boards are more likely to generate innovative ideas, and they're less likely to suffer from groupthink. And I think there's a whole load of academic studies that prove that. Yeah. Now I've got a personal, very sexist view, which probably is totally inappropriate, but my personal, totally inappropriate view is that all male boards can sometimes be a little bit like a power hothouse. People are trying to assert themselves. They don't they don't necessarily look for the common good. They're kind of looking to advance themselves, or at least, and I'm not talking just about boards here. I'm also talking about sort of management groups that I've been on and things like that, where that people are just really trying to assert themselves. And that doesn't mean that women don't play those games, but I think if you have a diverse board, and if you've got a woman on the board, she's worked a bit harder than the man to get there. She's more likely to be driven by the rational motives, and she's more likely to be pushing for the collective results. I think it's definitely more collaborative in that.
And I think the modern company, I think, is that has to look outside the box much more, and to the wider world in terms of looking after your staff, sustainability, all of these things. I think they're wising up now, I think, to having women on the board and it making the difference. There's still a long way to go. Still a long way to go, but at InSync, what's the ratio of people on your board? Is it 50-50 or?
Well, we've got actually we've only got 7 on the board, and 2 of them are women.
Okay, yeah, great.
But we try, like I said, diversity is in there as well. We've got a couple of people over retirement age, and we've got an employee director and things like that. It is about diversity. That is what makes a company think differently. And it's good to have women in the senior roles, because they are then role models for the next generation. And we certainly want more young people in the profession, or people coming into the profession, from other areas. We want just fresh ideas. We want new solutions. We need creativity. All companies need new ideas, and they can come from all sorts of areas, not just young people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So what are you up to now, Paola? What sort of projects are you working on now, and what you're up to at InSync and outside InSync as well, in particularly with your journal as well? Yeah,
so we've got a few things underway at InSync, which we're going to start talking about later in the year as we build up the publicity for NAB. We've got most exciting is to talk more about Frameformer Live. So this is the software cloud-based standards converter that I mentioned that we've developed with our partner Highscale. Frameformer Live is quite different to anything else you'll find, because it is CPU only, so it can be deployed in the cloud and completely on any instance you like. It's live, it's real-time standards converter, and it'll handle streams. So it's just something really exciting. We're talking a lot about that. We are also got a couple of other hardware projects underway which are more secret, so I'm going to keep those back and keep the powder dry on those until later in the year. With the image processing journal, actually, we are just in the stage of recruiting some more associate editors. So the associate editors are the subject matter experts that look after papers as they come in. And you really do need a subject matter expert to be able to decide when they read the reviews from the reviewers, you know, if the paper is suitable for publication. It's one of the things that's essential for quality, making sure that only the very best papers are published. So we're just in a round of interesting or recruiting some more associate editors, and we've got a number of applicants that we're working through at the moment. We're going to do, and then we've got some of our associate editors put themselves forward as guest editors. And they invite papers on a special theme, and they're specially curated, and we have a couple of special issues underway as well at the moment. So, you know, there's an awful lot going on.
Great. And who can submit papers? Is it
it's literally anyone. It's an open access journal which is published by Wiley. And you write a technical paper and you submit it through the website. You know, it's literally open access. Anyone can.
That's really interesting. Great. Okay. Well, I think we've come to the end of our time. Is there any gems that you've got for people sort of wanting to move into this area, particularly in motion compensation engineering?
Yeah, just I suppose what I would say is, you know, if you love maths, science, if you like practical stuff, if you like doing things, if you like making things happen, engineering is ideal. And if anybody's sort of hesitating, oh, am I good enough? You know, don't worry about it. I'm one of the most ordinary people in the world, you know, and the number of times I've said, oh, do you think, can I do this? Yeah, go on, give it a go. And it's always worth, even if you think it's going to be difficult, you say, well, I'll just give it a try. And if it works out, it does. And if not, I haven't lost anything. So it is just follow your passion and just try. Yeah, give it a go.
Great. Yeah, and if it doesn't work out, it's part of the process anyway, isn't it? You always learn something from things that don't work. So lovely. Well, thank you so much, Paola. Really lovely to have you today. And yeah, thank you very much.
Well, it's been great talking to you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.